Hello music lovers, welcome to episode 43 of What Makes This Song Special. The show where every week I take a different song, I talk about why it's special to me, what does it remind me of in my past. We'll talk a little bit about the song and about the singer, about the singer's technique, and then I'll follow up with a part 2 where I'll do my own cover version of each week's song. This week we're going way back this week, 1987. I was in primary 1, primary 2 at primary school. We were living in Stamplin Gardens in Clarkston in the south side of Glasgow. And as a little kid growing up in the 80s, there was always something new entering the world. You know, I feel so lucky to have been about at that tiny moment in time, you know, where so much was changing. The era of computers and software programs and technological gadgets was upon us, and we were right there to embrace it all, you know, like almost oblivious to the fact that the world was about to change in possibly the most extreme way ever, maybe in recorded history. Or maybe every era thinks that that their era changed more than any other era, but I think the era of computers has changed everything, you know, and it just seemed that there were just significant new inventions arriving on the market every week. The Game Boy, computers, computer games in general, disposable cameras, the Walkman, the camcorder, even CDs and mobile phones, even though most of us didn't own them until the 90s. I think it was only very, very, very wealthy people that owned those things in the 80s. But I think from all of that, these incredibly iconic historical things were born. Super Mario Brothers, synthesizer music, hair metal, countless unforgettable movies, etc, etc. You know, the digital age was born, and I suppose it's only in hindsight that I properly appreciate now how amazing that was to be a kid when that was all happening in the world. It was an amazing time. I think the 80s is definitely an era that a lot of people talk about as being just this really kind of magical time, and for many reasons it was. I don't remember how I first heard about what we're going to talk about or who brought it to my attention, but I remember there was this huge buzz in the house one Saturday morning when my mum announced that she was going to get us or take us to rent a video player, a video recorder, a VHS, whatever you want to call it. And my brother Dario was only about 2 years old at this point, and my youngest brother Luciano wasn't even born yet, so the excitement was probably just coming from me. It was my excitement, and I don't think I really understood what I was excited about, but it seemed like something, you know, something big, something huge, something life-changing. For those of you who are watching who are under the age of 30, you've got to understand that we grew up with 3 or 4 channels on the TV, and that was it. You watched whatever came on those channels. There was no pausing, there was no rewinding, there was no fast forward, there was no choosing what you wanted to see. You get served up a program on each of the channels and you watched it, or you chose something else to do that didn't involve television. That was it. There was no Netflix, there was no Prime, there weren't even DVDs, nothing. And then one day the world changed because you were able to buy your favourite films and watch them on the TV whenever you wanted, and rewind them and pause them and fast forward to your favourite bits and then watch them again and again and again and again until you knew every single line in the movie. It was unthinkable at that point, you know. It seems like such an obvious, you know, we take these things for granted, I think, now, whereas back then, and certainly my kids take these things for granted. They can never decide what they want to watch. They're on Netflix and they flick through 100 different programs before they decide what they want to watch. We never had that liberty. So my mum took us out in the car that morning and we drove to this little shop in a town called Busby, which is just not far from where we stayed. It was called JW Smiley. And you could get your washing machine repaired, your Hoover fixed, your iron fixed, and you could rent a VHS player or a TV from there. I don't know why I remember this so vividly. I mean, I was only about 4 or 5 years old, maybe 5, but it was this monumental moment. I remember we rented, or maybe bought the tape, I can't remember, but we bought or rented Return to Oz, and a film where a cat got on a spaceship. I think it was a Disney movie. I think it was called The Cat from Outer Space or something like that. And I remember watching them on repeat. You know, we we watched those films until we knew every single word, every line. And we rented the VHS player, the video player, a few times before my mum and dad obviously realised that it was probably cheaper in the long run just to buy one. And we got our very first video player. And we were quite an outdoors family, so we went for walks and played sports and did lots of things that didn't involve watching TV. But regardless of that, this was a huge monumental moment. You know, it became something to look forward to. When I was in school and I needed some escapism from learning to do times tables or whatever, I would think about, oh, what film we could get at the weekend, what film we were going to get to watch at the weekend. Maybe my mum and dad had taped something for us. Sometimes they would remember to record something onto a blank tape from the TV, and we'd get to watch these programs that come on the television over and over and over again. Now we lived in this like long suburban street with a little row of shops along at the end, and it wasn't long before someone opened a very sort of American style video rental shop. It was called Azad Video. So before Global Video and Blockbuster and all the big chains came along, we had Azad Video at the Stampolin shops. I'm sure it was called Azad Video. And a Friday treat, a weekend treat, used to be that Mum and Dad would pick us up from school on a Friday afternoon, and we would get to go and pick a film to watch. At the weekend, you could rent it for 2 days or whatever. You had to take it back on the Sunday. And it was so exciting because it was, as I said, it was this thing to look forward to. If we were ever off school because we weren't feeling well, my mum would take us down to Azad Video and get us a film to watch on the couch, packet of tunes, some Calpol, hot milk and honey, a blanket and a movie. And we watched all these great films at the time that were coming out, like Karate Kid, and there was this Alice in Wonderland film that was not the Disney one, but this kind of, I don't know, I've never seen it since. It was probably rubbish, but we enjoyed it at the time. The Sound of Music, Flight of the Navigator, The Never Ending Story, all these amazing films. Just this magical time, and it just felt liberating getting to watch all these things. Any other 80s kids watching, please leave a comment and let me know what your favourite movies were at that point, because there were so many great iconic movies in the 80s. Anyway, we went to Azad Video almost every Friday after school to pick our film of choice for the weekend, and they must have had the same mixtape on the stereo system for the entire time that shop was open, because every time we went in it was the same few songs that I remember playing in the background when we were spending ages trying to work out what film we wanted, but none as much as today's song, which was Time After Time by Cyndi Lauper. An amazing track, just such a great song. And again, I know I've used the word iconic a few times. I think you have to when you talk about the 80s, but that's a really iconic 80s track. I think it takes probably lots of people back to that era, that time, and it takes me right back to that little video rental shop, and the excitement of picking a movie to watch and arguing with my brothers and cousins every weekend over which one we were going to take. So just golden times, an amazing song, and that's what it takes me back to. Every time I hear it, I remember walking down to the video shop in Stampolin Gardens. So there we go, short story this week. I'll talk a wee bit about the song itself, Time After Time. It was released in January 1984 by Cyndi Lauper. She'd written what she thought was a finished album, but the record company wanted another song, and they paired her with songwriter Rob Hyman to come up with something together. They sat at the piano, and I think very organically and very quickly came up with this masterpiece of a song. And for once, the record company got it right. Quite often, record companies will force artists into doing things that, in my opinion, aren't the right thing to do. Quite often, if you think of artists like Don McLean, and who wrote some incredible songs. And American Pie is an amazing song, but the record company, I think, forever wanted Don McLean to write a second American Pie, and he was more of a Bob Dylan, Paul Simon type singer-songwriter. The American Pie thing was a kind of one-off for him. He wasn't really a pop song writer, and there are lots of different examples of that happening over the years with lots of artists, where the record company sort of forced them into doing something that was kind of out with their comfort zone, and I think it quite often destroys artists. But this one, obviously they got it completely right, because the pairing with Rob Hyman gave birth to this wonderful track. A huge hit, one of her biggest and most memorable songs from her catalogue, and has been covered by thousands of singers over the years. I always talk a little bit about the singer at the end, as always, for just a very quick minute or so. Cyndi Lauper has a really unusual and distinctive voice, and I'm going to say this with no exaggeration at all. I honestly think she's maybe the most underrated singer ever. There you go, I've said it. I don't think many people know what she's capable of vocally. She had this really unique sounding, fun tone to her voice that you hear on songs like Girls Wanna Have Fun or True Colours. It's quite cute. It's quite thin on those tracks and works for the kind of 80s pop production that's behind it. But please go and look at some of her clips on YouTube of her really letting go and really singing. Her range is utterly incredible. I mean, it's ridiculous. Her tone isn't always thin either. Not that that's a bad thing, but she's also got this really big, open, covered, almost operatic voice on certain songs, where she sounds nothing like that little kind of quirky pop star that she's famous for being. An absolutely outrageous vocalist, incredible, who can really sing anything. And her voice is still perfect. I mean, she'll be 70 this year, and her voice still sounds absolutely awesome. So we are not worthy, Cyndi Lauper. So there we go. There's my wee breakdown of the song and of Cyndi Lauper's vocal and my wee story. I'm sure we've all got a story with this song. Leave me a wee comment if this song takes you back to a point in your childhood or a point in your life. Why is it important? Why is it special to you? I'll be back next week with another special song. Thank you very much for listening, as always, and please hit like, subscribe, and click on the video to hear my cover version of Time After Time.